There's a quiet force in every organization. It does not appear on the balance sheet. It is not listed in the strategy deck. But it decides whether ambition becomes progress or just noise. That force is culture, the invisible system that shapes what gets prioritized, protected, and passed down. When transformation begins, it is culture that answers the unspoken question: will this hold? Hi, I'm Mirza Chughtai, and this is part 4 of The Long Arc, a series exploring the unseen disciplines that make transformation stick. Today, we are tackling one of the hardest and most misunderstood levers in leadership: culture. Not as atmosphere, but as infrastructure. The terrain where clarity, urgency, and execution are either forged or forfeited. In this episode, I want to take you beyond the values on the wall and into the operational heartbeat of culture. What it enables, where it fractures, and how leaders can architect it for transformations that last. Because in the end, culture is not a vibe, it is a system. And if you do not shape it, it will shape your outcomes. If you are navigating transformation of any scale, culture will not follow. It must lead. Because culture is the silent architect of the enterprise. It shapes not only how people behave, but what they believe is rewarded, tolerated, or ignored. And it does so whether we name it or not. Did you know strategy falters without cultural traction? Even innovation fizzles without cultural reinforcement, while execution slows when culture fragments. And transformation? It fails when culture does not adapt. Because culture is what carries the load when complexity scales. It is what tells the truth when systems obscure it. And when pressure mounts, it is not process or policy that leads, it is culture. In every organization where I've had the privilege to lead, advise, or transform, culture was not just a lever for recovery or change. It was the invisible system behind everything that worked, and the root cause behind everything that stalled. The best organizations I've seen do not just have a culture, they have a coherent one. Not loud, but aligned. Not perfect, but principled. Not ornamental, but operational. That kind of coherence is never accidental. It is architected through discipline. In today's episode, I'll walk you through 3 field-tested cultural disciplines, forged through experience and built for execution at scale. Number 1, culture as the infrastructure of momentum. The connective tissue between talent, tools, and trust, where culture multiplies motion, not friction. Number 2, urgency without panic, integrity with theater. Because in high pressure environments, leadership posture is not optional. It becomes the tone that scales. Number 3, architect for alignment, not just performance, where innovation meets integration, and culture rewards shared success, not just isolated excellence. These are not philosophies, they are operating patterns, observable, repeatable, and essential to organizational excellence. So let's begin. Discipline 1: Culture as the infrastructure of momentum. Most organizations do not lack talent. They do not lack tools. They do not lack plans either. What they lack is traction. Where execution stutters, teams operate with good intent but little lift. Frustration builds quietly, momentum slips, and no one can quite explain why. The strategy made sense, the resources were appropriately allocated, the systems were modern, but something still resisted. That something is culture. Because culture is not what happens after the plan, it is what holds the plan together. When culture is weak, even great ideas fall flat. When culture is strong, small initiatives become movements. Because culture does not just reinforce a strategy, it animates it. It converts individual motion into shared movement. It creates flow across people, across functions, across time zones. And here's the truth every leader learns too late: culture does not slow you down, it makes acceleration safe. It is the unseen system where shared language makes alignment intuitive. Cross functional ownership makes collaboration real. Cadence and ritual make velocity feel natural. When culture is treated as infrastructure, not ambiance, it becomes the connective tissue that multiplies motion rather than friction. I saw this firsthand. Two global financial services firms, similar mandates, modernize legacy platforms. Similar tools, playbooks, governance, also had the same external guidance. But one delivered 20 times faster releases, 3 times cost reduction, 10x risk mitigation. The other stayed stuck. Why? Culture. One created urgency, the other waited for consensus. One shared wins, the other hoarded credit. One respected facts, the other deferred to opinions. Same frameworks, same ambition, but different outcomes because of different behaviors. One modeled urgency, transparency, and integrity. One rallied teams around shared mission, not just individual KPIs. One created systems that upheld truth over personality. Here's a leadership insight for you. Culture is the glue between strategy that enables innovation, which fuels transformation and sparks turnaround. It creates momentum when talent and tools are already in place. If there is no cultural shift, there's no transformation that sticks. That is why in every meaningful change, culture is not the garnish, it is the infrastructure. I'm sure if you have ever felt the drag, the resistance between intent and outcome, chances are culture was misaligned. Let's move to the second discipline. Discipline 2: urgency without panic, integrity with theater. Let's talk about urgency. In a turnaround, urgency is not optional. But panic? Panic is a virus. It spreads confusion, short circuits clarity, and fractures trust. And then there's theater. Leadership, whether we admit it or not, is inherently performative. People are watching, not just for direction, but for emotional cues, for posture, for tone. Some leaders reject this. They see theater as artificial. They try to lead quietly from behind the curtain. But the best I've seen do something different. They do not dismiss the stage, they honor it. Because when theater aligns with integrity, when performance is grounded in truth, it becomes a force for coherence, not confusion. In high stakes environments, people do not just absorb the message, they absorb the messenger. They track the pauses, the sequencing, what gets named and what gets skipped. And in that space, culture is shaped. This kind of leadership does not require perfection, it requires presence. Leaders who embody the message do not just deliver it, they use visibility to steady the ship, not spotlight themselves. They make room for truth, even when it is hard. And when that alignment happens, something powerful takes root. Teams move with direction, not confusion. Principled conflict becomes creative, not corrosive. Trust grows because posture matches principle. One of the most striking examples I witnessed was during an integration effort involving two newly acquired business units. Two senior leaders, two very different styles, same pressures, but vastly different cultural outcomes. The first leader understood the integration was not just technical, it was cultural. He showed up, literally monthly town halls, in-person visits to regional offices, live Q&A sessions, clear articulation of what we know, what we do not, what we will commit to together. He did not perform perfection, he performed integrity. He took questions in real time. He listened visibly. He made promises carefully. And the culture responded. Morale lifted. Teams aligned to mission, not personalities. Wins were shared, not siloed. Friction dropped. His leadership tone became the cultural tone. This is not performance as pretense. It is performance as presence. And the second, he relied on slides and secondhand messaging. He managed through dashboards and delegated trust. The posture of leadership never made it to the front lines. And the culture reflected that distance. Teams hoarded information. KPIs became a performance, not a truth. Skill was present, but never scaled. Talent was active, but uninspired. Because when theater is empty, people know. They recognize the gap. Leadership is a contact sport. You cannot spreadsheet your way to trust. You cannot dashboard your way to belief. You have to embody the tone you want to scale in the organization. Urgency without panic, integrity with theater. That is not just poetic. It is the operational blueprint of cultures that endure pressure and grow stronger through it. Let us now explore the final discipline. Discipline 3, Architect for Alignment. Performance is measured, alignment is assumed. And that assumption is dangerous. Because in most organizations, what looks like progress is often just motion. Teams chase metrics, functions optimize locally, middle managers protect their turf. It all feels productive, but it is not coordinated. And in any transformation, especially in a turnaround, uncoordinated performance is not just inefficient, it is a liability. Execution is not the sum of activity, it is the product of aligned motion. And that alignment does not happen by accident. It must be designed, it must be protected, and it must be architected through clear roles that are distinct but interdependent, through governance that connects data to decisions, through rituals that elevate shared context, not just cascade direction. The strongest leaders I've seen do not just obsess over delivery, they obsess over connection. They design for interdependence so that one team's excellence does not become another's obstacle. They reward collaboration, not just compliance. They encode alignment into the very fabric of the operating model. I was fortunate to lead a global engineering team supporting some of the most complex infrastructure transitions of our time. From data center to cloud, from reactive to self-healing, from legacy to AI native. We were not just modernizing platforms, we were reshaping operating models. Across North America, EMEA, Asia Pacific, we built end-to-end customer solutions across internal clouds and external clouds, spanning AI infrastructure, containerized automation, high-performance compute and data as a service, secure orchestrations, and full-stack API architectures. My team was composed of 4 major disciplines: enterprise architecture, solutions development and engineering, systems engineering, and data science. And within each, deeply technical subdomains from security to networking, internal and external clouds to automation and infrastructure as code, enterprise storage to modern digital workspace services. In this dynamic environment, innovation was not an event, it was a rhythm. But here is what mattered most. Every engineer could innovate, but that innovation had to plug in. It had to align with the thematic outcomes of the full system, not just optimize one layer of it. This was not about limiting creativity, it was about refining it. Because when innovation flows with alignment, you unlock something extraordinary. Engineers anticipate integration points. Disciplines support rather than compete. Teams build for each other, not just for their own silo. And creativity scales because it connects. And what did that allow? It allowed leadership, myself included, to focus on the long arc, building new partner ecosystems, developing strategic acceleration levers, supporting procurement modernization efforts, and most importantly, creating a deeper, more durable customer impact. Because the cultural groundwork had been laid. Because alignment was not a poster, it was operational. But let us be clear, that kind of clarity takes work. Architectural documentation, discipline in review cycles, a willingness to challenge ambiguity before it spreads. This is not innovation in isolation. It is systems informed creativity, aligned at the root, scalable at the edge, enabled by culture. And that, more than dashboards or KPIs, is what makes performance stick. Here's a recap. Culture is not what you say. It is what your teams survive. It is what gets reinforced when no one is watching. It is what gets repeated when the pressure is on. It is what decides quietly but powerfully what gets prioritized, protected, and passed on. And in moments of change, culture does not wait for the strategy to land. It moves either to stabilize the organization or to destabilize your credibility. That is why culture is not the backdrop to transformation. It is the terrain on which every execution effort must travel. And if you are not shaping that terrain with discipline, you're letting it shape you by default. So take a hard look at your culture, not the values on the wall, the behaviors in the room. Ask yourself, not as a performer, but as a practitioner. Are your systems rewarding shared success or isolated excellence? Is your urgency coherent or performative? Where is your organization confusing activity with alignment? Where is innovation outpacing integration? And where is leadership posture creating panic instead of presence? Because if culture is not actively shaped, it will passively resist. These are not philosophical questions, they are operational realities. If culture is the hardest lever in a transformation, then treat it like one. Architect it, model it, protect it. Because without a culture shift, there is no execution that scales, and there is no transformation that sticks. This is Mirza Chughtai, and next up is part 5, Resilience through Architecture. Until then, let's keep building trust, clarity, execution, and culture that sparks excellence. Let's keep building transformation that sticks.